welcome back to an episode of the Open Source Cafe. Today we are joined by Natan from Robusta, and we're going to talk about two of the most, when I first started my career, two of the things that I did a little deep dive into and I find really interesting, which is AI and DevOps. So we're going to merge those two today and we're going to answer some of the questions. Well, Nate is going to answer a lot of questions. I have a lot of questions, so I'll be asking Nate. And before we get started, Natan, would you like to give us a quick intro and what you do? And yeah.
Well, I think we need to answer the big question. What on earth does AI and DevOps have to even do with one another? And why am I here to talk about that, right? I think a lot of people know Robusta because we have a platform for Kubernetes observability and monitoring. And then the question that we get now sometimes is, okay, you guys did something related to AI, but what is that thing and what's going on? So very briefly, we launched an open source project that's really taken off. And it takes your Prometheus alerts and it sends them to ChatGPT, and then it says essentially, tell me how you would fix this Prometheus alert, and then it sends back information giving you advice on how to fix alerts that are going on in your cluster. So that's not the main thing that we do with Robusta, but it's something that's been really taking off lately that we launched as a side project originally.
Yeah, and got a lot of nice feedback I saw on Twitter, and you got so many stars and stuff. So it's interesting to see. And if you all want to check it out for yourself, you can check out the links in the description below. And same for Robusta as well. But we're here to talk about AI and DevOps. So before we get started, maybe you can answer my first question, which is, what are some of the benefits of incorporating artificial intelligence into the DevOps processes?
So it's an interesting question because, in general, what makes a good programmer a good programmer? And I like to say something that's maybe controversial, but I always like to say I think a programmer's best quality is being lazy. And what I mean by that is you don't like doing stuff that's boring, repetitive work again and again, right? You don't like doing something that a computer could do for you. So a lot of people get into programming because you go, oh, I can script this, right? I can have a program do something instead of me going and clicking this button a million times. And what's really interesting about AI is now we're starting to take that to the next level. I'll give you a silly example. Okay, I have to go and I have to run a pod on Kubernetes and I have to write out a YAML. I don't remember the YAML. I don't remember every field in that YAML, right? I need to go up and you look at the docs for the simple stuff. I use the VS Code templates, but a lot of the stuff there, it's not interesting work. And if I took a YAML file and I auto-generated it or something could just create that boilerplate for me, I could look at the boilerplate. I can tell that it's right. I can look in VS Code, see that the syntax is right. But I don't remember the name of the exact place to put in amount or to add in the volume or even the CPU requests. It's things you define every once in a while. So before AI and before ChatGPT, I would go online, I would look up the documentation, and I would just say, okay, what's the name of this field? Where am I going to write it out? And that sort of busy work is this type of stuff that I don't want to do because I'm lazy. And I think that's actually a fairly good trait in a programmer because you can get more done. And if a computer can do something for you, then why not?
Does that help? Yeah, you are not the first person who has said that being a lazy is actually a good skill for a programmer, because you would find ways to automate your tasks, and I have definitely heard it in the past. So you're not alone. All right.
I need no justification because I'm a lazy guy and I'm trying to say,
Yeah.
oh, I'm okay.
I'm just like it. Yeah. I could not agree more. And yeah, I think it's a funny answer, but definitely true in some sense. And yeah, thanks for answering, Nathan. And moving on, building up to the questions. If we talk about DevOps, we oftentimes, we work with continuous integration, deployment, and things like that. So maybe you can share how can AI help with CI/CD in DevOps.
So it's another great example. I want to be lazy, right? I want to learn. Let me put it differently, because not all laziness is good, right? If I go into a doctor and I'm going to have my brain operated on, and the doctor is lazy, that's not a good thing, right? But if I go in to the doctor and on the way in I get a coffee and the coffee is made by a machine that's all automated, fantastic, right? So the way I think about it is you want to be lazy in the areas that are boring, that you don't have to do a lot, where it doesn't matter. And then you want to really, because you're being lazy in those areas, then you can focus all your attention on the stuff that matters. So bringing that back now to GitHub Actions, a GitHub action is like a classic example of something that you write. Most people write like once at the beginning of a project, and then you completely forget about it, and you never do much with the GitHub actions, and you loop back like 3 months later, and you change one line of code, and then maybe like a year later you have another project, and again you touch GitHub actions a little bit. So it's not the type of thing where I remember the precise syntax for each and everything that I want to put in the GitHub action. So if I could use AI tooling to just generate that boilerplate for me, fantastic, right? Like I'll still look it over, I'll still check that it's doing the right thing. But if I could just get started faster and not have to dig around the docs or look at different examples online, like why not let AI do that for me?
Yeah, and couldn't agree more. One thing I want to mention to folks is that Nathan has not seen these questions before, so it's all completely,
Oh yeah, I'm because you
impromptu.
asked me that, and I'm thinking like, is there an AI tool out there for
There,
any actions that I'm not aware of? But you probably chat GPT.
yeah. So we're gonna be answering like a lot of random questions here. So you'll see the impromptu answers, and I think that's one of the best. There's a feedback I've gotten on the podcast is like I like how you all are unprepared, so it brings out the natural form. And if you want to see more professional stuff, we have webinars and we make devs as well. So make sure you check that out. But anyway, um, let's get into a little bit formality stuff. So when we talk about AI in DevOps, there's this term coined called AIOps. So can you maybe explain that concept and how it relates to DevOps?
Yeah. So okay. First of all, don't confuse AI apps and ML apps. They're two totally separate things. AI apps is when you take AI and you use it, you send all your DevOps events and stuff to AI, and then you try and have the artificial intelligence identify anomalies and identify different like patterns and say, oh, here, there's an incident that you should be aware of. ML ops, which is completely unrelated, is like how you do DevOps for machine learning stuff that's running in production. So, and then there's a third thing now, which is what we're actually talking about today, which is using AI in DevOps, and is very, very different than what people traditionally called AI apps. Traditionally, AI apps was when was essentially like very statistical, and very like based on pattern matching. So you'd like send a bunch of alerts, and it would look at that and would try and understand, okay, like there's a certain seasonality here, and like every Monday you have a certain spike or something, and then this Monday there's less traffic, and it would look at patterns like that. So it was good at figuring out where you should look and like what events require your attention, but it was always incapable of telling you why. It couldn't do the holy grail of really of DevOps and incident response, which is to tell you why something is happening and what's going on. So that AI apps traditionally couldn't do, because it was just finding correlations. It's like saying, okay, well, when the road is wet outside, then it rains. Like there's a correlation there, but you got the causation all wrong. And what's interesting and very exciting now is that we live in a time where things are changing really fast. If you look at now ChatGPT and what that's able to bring to AI apps, then for the first time, we can do something that was always impossible, which was really to get closer to that holy grail, which is root cause analysis. And that's a big part of what we tried to do with Robusta and with the ChatGPT plugin for Robusta. So I'm excited to be living in a time where things that we used to think were impossible or like decades away are suddenly happening really, really fast.
Yeah, things have been moving pretty quickly. With the ChatGPT stuff as well, like I see so many folks utilizing it in so many domains, and obviously, like the cloud native industry, they're not going to fall behind, uh, given how competitive we all can get. But anyway,
If I
uh,
was a startup founder, I would quit my job and do a startup right now, because that's how excited I am about what's
yeah.
going on. Because there's so many things that just last year we thought were possible. Like
Hmm.
there's so many new types of applications that you could build today that you just couldn't have built last year. So
Yeah.
normally when you look for ideas, you have to look for a really good idea that no one has done before. But today you just need to look for a really good idea, because by definition, no one has done it before.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I couldn't agree more. And uh, when we talk about DevOps, a lot of like I don't know why. Like I mean, I get it. People formalize these things a little bit in terms of, maybe if I coin the term, let's say DevOps engineers, they're like, it's no such thing as a DevOps engineer. Well, you know what I mean. So ideally, if I do double course so that no one gets offended, so maybe you can share how is AI going to impact the role of DevOps engineers.
So it's impacting it in two main ways. One of them is definite. We know it's already happening. And the other one is part of the change that we're trying to really bring, but we have to see whether it's going to, we have to see how far we can get with it. The first change is it's easier to set stuff up. Like go back again to what I said about GitHub Actions or generating Kubernetes YAML files, right? You can just say to ChatGPT today, people are already doing it. Like, give me a GitHub action for to do this and that, and it'll give you the GitHub action. You can say, give me, I believe there's an open source tool now that does this, where you can say, give me a YAML that does whatever, and it will spit out the Kubernetes YAML for you. So just in terms of generating stuff, that's already really good. That's like the GitHub Copilot use case, right? You could do that with GitHub Copilot. You could do it with ChatGPT. You could do it with live tools. But for generating stuff and getting started faster, it's never been a better time. And this reduces the barrier for entry as well for many people. So that's very cool. And then the second thing I said I'm really excited about, and the way it's impacting DevOps engineers and it's impacting SREs and platform engineers, is the ability to take all this data that occurs and that a human wouldn't always be able to look at all the data, and to take known patterns from the past, and then to have AI say, okay, this is the root cause. This is why something is happening. And there are challenges here. Like ChatGPT doesn't remember enough of the internet in order to actually recall when certain errors occur. Like a good way to put this is like, let's say I go to ChatGPT and I put in some like esoteric error, and I put in some error and say this error occurred. How do I fix it? And ChatGPT doesn't really know how, right? But if you pause for a second and you think about it, then you realize, wait a minute, like Kunal, if I went to you and I said, there's this Prometheus there in Kubernetes and it has this name and this is the text, tell me how to fix that error. You wouldn't remember either. You'd go to Google and then you look it up on Google and then you go back and then you tell me. So when we expect ChatGPT to just remember from the training data how to fix this stuff, then we might be expecting too much. But if we can go and we can send this data to ChatGPT and then maybe even say to ChatGPT, like, okay, go read the first page of Google results, bring all that data into ChatGPT, and then just summarize it for me in one line and tell me what I need to know, or pull in other data, or here's all the data from my cluster. Go read this, look online at Google also, see if there are known problems here, and now tell me what I need to do in order to fix this. Now we're starting to look at something where we can get really good and interesting results. And of course, there are challenges here with like privacy and stuff, and to not send your production data out. So there's a lot of challenges here, but challenges get me excited because like I like a good engineering challenge, especially if the payoff is really incredible.
Yeah, can you talk a little bit more about some of the potential like risks and challenges that are associated with using, AI in DevOps?
Okay, yeah. So I would break the risks and challenges into, I guess, two main categories. The first is reliability, and the second is privacy. So by reliability, I mean you can't go and say to ChatGPT, like, here's an error, tell me what command to run to fix it. Now go and run that command automatically. I would be very afraid to do that. Maybe somewhere in the training data, it has like enough jokes that you should run RM, RF to fix problems. And now it's going to go and it's going to wipe everything on my computer. So when it comes to reliability, then the question is, okay, how can we get back answers from ChatGPT and then verify that these answers are correct and these answers make sense? Or if it gives me a root cause, how can I verify that that root cause is actually true? And we're starting to think a little bit about how we can, like with the Robusta ChatGPT plugin, how we can bring back better data. But right now, we just show you that data as a tip. So we're not running any of those commands, and you have to look at that yourself, and then either it's useful or it's not useful. So we're trying to think about how we can increase the reliability there and how we can, for someone who hasn't encountered this error before, how we can increase your confidence that what ChatGPT is telling you is actually correct. So that's the first class of challenges, how you increase reliability. And then the second class of challenges is around data privacy. Like you don't want to send out all your data to ChatGPT. So there's stuff that would increase reliability, but then it introduces challenges around privacy. So there are a few different answers here and a few different possible solutions. Probably long term, these large language models like ChatGPT are going to actually be running maybe more on the edge or running your own environment. Again, I'm not an ML guy. I have to give that disclaimer. I'm someone who's using this technology, but I'm not involved in developing ChatGPT itself. I'm a consumer of the technology. So I'm not the expert on this, but I think we at least look at maybe where the market is going to be going in terms of also the privacy implications and what we can do about that.
Yeah. Just an additional on that can be for DevOps teams, for example, right? How can the teams ensure that there are like ethical and responsible uses of AI in the processes that they have?
Yep. So I don't know. I don't know if there are big ethical issues specifically around the DevOps use case. You put me on the spot with that question. I don't know. Do you have a specific challenge in mind there?
Um, Ideally, I'd say, let's say, for example, the challenge of you get a solution from ChatGPT, for example, and I think it's really I don't think it's safe in terms of just implementing that without knowing where it originates from. For example, I think that's one of the if it was my team, I think that's something I would definitely keep in mind. You can use it if you know the origin, like how it originates. But if you don't, then maybe putting it in production, I don't know. But for testing stuff, I think it's all right. But yeah, if you're pushing it out there in the real world, you should know where it came from.
Yeah. So I have mixed feelings on this whole thing because on the one hand, you're damn right, like you're absolutely right. On the other hand, if you look something up online on Google and you take the first result in Stack Overflow and you copy code from that, do you really know where that code came from either?
Well, I think it depends on how on the gravity of the situation as well. Um, like how much of a change that like sometimes it's pretty transparent. Sometimes it might not be.
On the other hand, there is some sort of proof around Stack Overflow, right? Because you see people
Hmm.
upvoted it.
Hmm.
So I don't know yet that we have the right answer with ChatGPT, but I think there are some interesting classes of problems where they're easy to verify but hard to find.
Hmm.
Um, and that sort of stuff is also like a good fit for what you can do with AI. Like if I give you, um, what's maybe an interesting example of this in DevOps? Okay, like if I give you, I tell you, okay, ChatGPT generate some YAML file for me, right? And it goes and completely makes it up, right? That's not going to pass YAML validation. I validate that with like what's a proper Kubernetes YAML, and ChatGPT put in some field that doesn't exist. It's not going to pass validation. So
Hmm.
there are some cases where you can take the output. You still want a human to look at it, right? But if you're limiting the output I can give you, and you're saying give me the output, but your output has to have this certain shape, then you can check that the output that you got back has that certain shape. And then if it doesn't, then don't use it, right? Or tell
Hmm.
the user you can't get a recommendation over here.
Yeah. 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 No, definitely something to think about. Maybe we can have a discussion on something like this would be ideally suitable for like a public discussion, like a Twitter space. So maybe we can do something like security people and AI people together. Oh, that'll be good.
Yes.
That'll be good. Yeah, let's do that one. All right. Well, next question is around maybe let's talk a little about if you're talking about so founder of Robusta. So we're talking about monitoring. So what are some of the ways in which AI can improve the DevOps monitoring and the alerting you know ecosystem?
I can get rid of the parts that people hate and let them focus on the stuff that they actually care about, and that's interesting. So there are a few areas here. One is around noise reduction. So you got a whole bunch of alerts, and they're all coming in, and they all look the same. And sometimes it can actually be hard for a human to for a computer to algorithmically take a bunch of stuff and then group it. Like think of how you do traditional grouping, right? You have to either have some regex or you have to identify some pattern. But there might be cases actually where you can run that through ChatGPT and it can automatically do a certain type of grouping for you. It's one idea that could be interesting here. So, but in general, AI solutions for grouping and noise reduction are interesting. And then I spoke a little bit about root cause analysis. So taking another and telling you why it happens. That's interesting. And also doing automatic correlations, tell you, oh, this happened, but you should look over here, or this happened a little bit before. So those are 3 topics off the top of my head.
Yeah, I'll give you a fourth one. So maybe if we talk about like optimizing, so in DevOps, let's say if we talk about optimizing your resource allocation and like your capacity planning and things like that, can we use AI with that as well? And how would one do that?
Wait, okay, when is this podcast going live?
Whenever you want me.
We
Oh.
have something. I didn't speak to you about it. We have something coming out that
No, no,
relates to your
you
last question.
no, you did not. Oh, these are good questions that I came up with. Nice.
There's a
No, you did not.
surprise. There's a surprise coming
Yeah,
from
you did not.
Robusta. It'll probably be out by the time this goes live. But we're going to give our take on that. And we're looking into how AI can help with resource recommendations. And probably our first take there is not going to involve AI. And then the second take, version like 1.1 or version 2, which is going to come out short afterwards, will incorporate some AI as well. So you guys
All
are
right.
going to wait to find out. But probably by the time this is out, you already know.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to what you share. But can you tell us a little bit more about, okay, if we talk about, let's say, uh, I think I've asked all of my questions, but in the end, if we can just wrap it up with maybe we can provide some examples of successful implementation of AI in DevOps. You can maybe give your own example of your open source project, and people can take that as a foundation to implement it in their own way.
Yeah. So I'm going to start with the most successful implementation ever, which is not us, but just go to ChatGPT and ask it to create a Kubernetes YAML for you to do something specific. Or go to ChatGPT and ask it a question about Kubernetes or to explain it simply. The answers are actually very often very good. And now going to our implementation and what we worked on that we're really excited about is we wrote an extension, a plugin for Robusta, where it takes your Kubernetes alerts. So it takes all your existing alerts from Prometheus, takes the alerts and bad stuff that happens in your cluster, and it sends it to ChatGPT when you click a button and says, what is the cause of this specific alert? And then ChatGPT sends back a response, and you just get that right there in Slack. So you have an alert, you click Ask ChatGPT, you get a ChatGPT response on how to fix that specific alert. And when we started out with the first version that we released, then we had something that was relatively simple in terms of what it sent over in terms of the prompt. And actually, Andy from Zen Internet, they just contributed a major version 2 of this that we're going to roll out soon. And that version 2 of the open source project, it will give much better output. And it structures the output in a certain way, and the prompt is a lot better, and you get back very cool results. So I'm excited that we're going to release that soon.
Amazing. And since we're talking about it, and we're talking about, let's say, business size of things, my final question is around. Let's say you've done all this, you've implemented AI in your process DevOps processes and all these other things, but how can organizations then evaluate the effectiveness of what they have just done? Let's say, how do you find the effectiveness of AI in your DevOps processes? We often struggle with measuring KPIs and stuff like that, but I don't think it's that much of an issue when it's all like numbers and things you can measure. So if we talk about AI in DevOps, how can you evaluate the effectiveness?
You should check for a reduced load on your support team. So if you have a DevOps team, and again, DevOps team with quotes, but if you have a DevOps team or a platform team that's supporting a development team, then what you want to look at is, has the number of requests for that DevOps team gone down? Are the developers now more able to function standalone without pulling in that team for everything? And if you have a bunch of developers and whenever like they run a job or whatever and something happens, and then they always go to you and say, okay, my pod is broken or something didn't deploy, right? The Helm release got broken. And why did that happen? And they open the ticket, and now you have to go as a DevOps engineer, you have to go and you have to investigate that. And right away you see that like they deployed a bad image tag, or right away you go and you see that their application is crashing, and according to the logs, it's an application error. And if you now roll out an AI solution, if you roll out the Robusta ChatGPT bot, and you see that the number of those requests goes down, now people are able to do self-service and they're able to fix that stuff on their own just by looking at the output from the open source tool and from ChatGPT, then I would say that's a success. That's what you want to look at, that you're reducing the load on yourself. I think that's the real task, because that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to be lazy, right? Like we're trying to do less work so that we can take our time and focus on the real interesting parts of work that an AI bot can't do for you. But if I just have to go and check the logs for some developer that doesn't know how to batch logs on Kubernetes, doesn't need to be a human task.
Amazing. Well, thanks a lot for sharing, Nathan. And boy, what a nice conversation. Really interesting, to hear your views. And yeah, I'm really looking forward to seeing what you all bring in the future with Robusta and everything. And we also came up with a nice idea of having security and AI folks together. I think we can make that happen. So let me just see who would be interested, and we can have that today discussion. But yeah, everyone else, thanks a lot for watching, and all the resources and everything will link in the description below. The Robusta open source projects, and you can connect with Nathan as well. And if you have any questions, you can ask them on Twitter, and or you can comment down below on the YouTube video. A pleasure, Nathan. Thanks a lot for joining and answering all the questions. And yeah, I'll see you in the next one. Great day. Bye.
It's a pleasure. Bye.